Oh hey, it's that time of the year again, 8 p.m. For this special occasion, I want to talk about one of my childhood treasures, most notably, one of the most popular horror video game franchises of all time. Five Nights at Freddy's. That's such a long title for a video game. Five Nights at Freddy's, or FNAF in short, took the world by storm in the year 2014. 2014 was a great time for a 6-year-old me, basically the pinnacle of my childhood. I had a lot of great memories during this time. Before the FNAF craze, I remember hopping on YouTube and watching gameplays of Happy Wheels, Slenderman, and Minecraft. Then this came and it changed everything. I also remember watching and listening to fan-made music videos, especially by The Games and The Living Tombstone. Yep, here's the list of my favorite music genres. So much FNAF stuff happened here and there. The community is massive, and by that, take a look at this graph. Say what you will about the franchise, it has a lot of impact on the horror video game genre. So let's take a look at each entry of the franchise and try to criticize what made these games good and why some of them are my least favorite. We'll be taking a look at the mainline entries first, then the spin-offs. Now, before we begin, I want to say that I won't be delving into the entirety of the series' lore. It's mainly because there are still a ton of mysteries left unsolved, and the lore itself is complex, especially to newcomers. So we'll only be taking a look at how each game looks and how they play. First up on Five Nights at Freddy's. Five Nights at Freddy's. So here's the core gameplay. You are in an office and it is your job to make sure that the animatronics are in their area. Oh no. You have to use the cameras to figure out their location. You can't move anywhere, so in order to survive, you can shut the doors on both sides of your office. Beware of the power, as the more you use it, the faster it depletes. Once it depletes, it's game over. Unless you have to make it to 6 a.m. Once you do, it's on to the next night. And you have to do this for a total of 5 nights. It gradually gets harder with each one. There are 2 other secret nights. Night 6 you can unlock by just beating the previous 5 nights, and the custom night that you can unlock by beating night 6. The custom night allows you to customize the difficulty for each animatronic. For each animatronic, we have Freddy, Golden Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy. Bonnie and Chica can be easily found, while Freddy can only appear in very few areas. Foxy stays in one location and you have to keep an eye on him, as he will charge to your left door. Once he is doing that, quickly shut the left door until he is gone. But what about jump scares? This game has one of the best jump scares in the series, as they look really real. The ambiance and the audio cues are really well put out, especially if you're playing the game with headphones on. This is also one of the hardest entries in the franchise, for me. From my experience back when I was 6 years old, I was able to breeze through the first 3 nights in one go. Night 4 was the worst one, possibly even worse than the last night. Beating this game for the first time was so rewarding that I forgot there were 2 more nights that I have to finish, and from that moment forward, I never played the game again for a few weeks. What I think made this game so great gameplay-wise is the power supply mechanic. It's the only entry with this mechanic. Sure, FNAF 2 has that, but I don't think it leaves much impact compared to the first game. With this mechanic, a lot more strategy is required to complete a single night. Playing with headphones on helps, since you can hear audio cues that determine whether that specific animatronic is in that area. But wearing headphones on can also make the jump scares leave much more impact. So that's the first FNAF game, 9 out of 10. Great design, great gameplay, and great jump scares. Next is FNAF 2. This game has some new changes compared to the last. You can toggle your flashlight on your cameras and the vents. There are no more doors that you can shut, so you're much more vulnerable. The only thing in your arsenal is the flashlight and the spare Freddy mask. This mask is used to fool any animatronic into believing that the player is an animatronic themselves. Speaking of animatronics, there are too damn many of them here. We got Toy Freddy, Bonnie and Chica, Withered Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, Mangle, and the Puppet. Oh, you also can't forget Withered Golden Freddy and Balloon Boy. Jesus, that's 11 animatronics. The puppet is the most interesting of the bunch. We have this jukebox that we need to keep playing. If we don't, then game over. Then we have Balloon Boy who steals your torch's batteries and has this annoying laugh. And let me tell you, this game is tough. Since there is no animatronics you need to keep track of, in addition to the flashlight's batteries and the puppet's jukebox, this game is much more intense and fast-paced. This game is Ultimate Custom Night before Ultimate Custom Light is released. Now, looking at this game from the outside, it's much more lively, and that perfectly sets with the sheer difficulty of this game. As for the jump scares, they look a bit cheap compared to the first game. They are scary, no doubt, but they just feel a bit cartoonish to me sometimes. Sometimes after you got jump scared, a little minigame pops out that has something to do with the story. After that, another jump scare. 6 out of 10. Looks okay. Incredibly difficult. Moving on. FNAF 3. So this is what Greenland looks like. Why is everything green? I know that we are in an abandoned pizzeria, but at least make things look a bit more dusty and abandoned, not a science lab. So here's the gameplay. When you look left, you can access the settings. Here you can repair the ventilation, the audio, all that stuff. On the right, you can access the cameras. You can toggle between the main cameras and the vent cameras. We only have one animatronic that we need to be aware of, Springtrap. For the other animatronics, we have Phantom Freddy, Watermelon, Foxy, Balloon Boy, Mangle, and the Puppet. The Phantoms don't do anything serious, but they can mess you up. They just jump scare you, peace out, and you have to repair the vents. The Phantoms appear in specific locations. Figure out where they are and you'll get immediately jump scared. Springtrap appears often either on the vents or in the pizzeria itself. You can use the audio button to bait Springtrap into that specific location. There is no power supply here, the ambience and the audio cues aren't really something to write home about. The jump scares have the right balance of scariness, especially for the Phantoms, but Springtrap's jump scares, they're not great. He's not even trying to scare you, he's just like, how you doing? 6 out of 10. Easy, doesn't look great, moving on. FNAF 4. This game is set in a bedroom, the one place we're all familiar with. We're playing as a little child and we're gonna defend ourselves against the nightmares. There are no ways to defend yourself. Just like the third game, you have infinite batteries for a flashlight. Elon Musk should make one of those. You can open and close the doors once you go near them. Here you can also toggle your flashlight if the animatronics are there or not. You also have the closet and you can pretty much do the same things you can do with the door. Then we have the bed and all we can do is just point our flashlight. In this game, you're gonna rely heavily on the audio. There are very few visual cues that determine the location of an animatronic. Speaking of which, we got Nightmare Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, Fredbear, Mango, Balloon Boy, Plushtrap, Nightmarion, and Nightmare. There are also Halloween-themed designs for some of them. Their jump scares are some of the best, and probably the most scariest. They nailed the ambiance with this game. It really feels like we're living our childhood nightmares, which is what I'm doing right now. 9 out of 10, great jump scares, and great design. Next we have FNAF 5, or Sister Location. This game compared to the others has a lot more narrative. Each night you are given different tasks and you gotta survive through each one of them. And may I introduce the best part of the game.
Please enter your name as seen above the keypad. This cannot be changed later. It seems that you had some trouble with the keypad. I see what you were trying to type, and I will auto-correct it for you. One moment. Welcome, Eggs Benedict.
The first night is pretty much charity, but the following nights, oh, you're gonna die. For the animatronics, we have Funtime Freddy, Foxy, Ballerina, Circus Baby, and Ennard. These animatronics are more futuristic-like. Their jump scares are great, especially the ones where they reveal the insides of their face. I like that this game doesn't use the standard format of the other games, where you're just in a fixed location and you gotta survive by whatever means necessary. No, in this game, you are assigned to complete different objectives in different locations. And that's what made this game really unique. The game does have that format after you beat the main game and is considered its own custom night. You gotta rely on the audio for some scenarios in the game, other times it's just spamming your left mouse button or dragging your mouse intensely. That's pretty much all I can say about this game without bringing in the story, so 9 out of 10. Great narrative, jump scares, the rest. Finally, we have FNAF 6, or Pizzeria Simulator. On the outside, looks like an FNAF spin-off game, but then this happened. Great. So, I am an owner of a pizzeria and it is my responsibility to decorate stuff, hope that I don't get a lawsuit, and attract customers. After the work is done, the work isn't done. So we're back in the standard FNAF gameplay. This time we gotta finish up our chores. You can upgrade stuff so that some things can be more efficient if you have enough money. On your left and right side there are vents. There are no ways to protect yourselves from animatronics. Just like FNAF 4, you will heavily rely on the audio. There's also this map on the screen where you can toggle audio on specific locations. You can also control the temperature of the room and the fans. Some of the chores that you gotta do make some noise so it can attract the animatronics. For the animatronics, we got Scrap Baby, Lefty, Molten Freddy, and Chip from Chip and Dale. Let me just sink this one in. Why does Springtrap look like he's from an animated zombie movie? Besides all that, you can also play minigames with the items that you bought. There are secrets that you can access by playing some of them. What makes me love this game is the ending. It's just so cool and epic. This game is the perfect end for the franchise. 10 out of 10, lots of great content, great design, jump scares and all. It's great. Oh, you exist. Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach, the first game in the franchise to have this one massive map. I think it looks cool with all the 80s retro stuff, but it doesn't make anything scary. Just a note, I haven't bought this game so I didn't play it, but I have seen videos about this game, so all of what I am about to say is all of what I can talk about on the outside. The overall design for each character makes this game feel like it's targeted towards younger audiences, when FNAF is known for being gruesome and dark. What about the gameplay? Well, now we can move around in a first-person perspective. We can also enter Glamrock Freddy. Moving around depletes his battery and there are dozens of charging stations for Freddy that are scattered throughout the whole map. There are these robots that are either janitors or guards. If they catch sight of you, they'll alert the nearby animatronics trying to get you. For the animatronics, we have Glamrock Freddy, Chica, Roxanne Wolf, Montgomery Gator, the daycare attendant, DJ Music Man, and...
Hi, please take this map. Take a map. Thank you. Please enjoy.
The jump scares aren't great, but they're not bad too. We also got a human night guard. Nothing special, but she just has the funniest jump scare of any horror game. Also, she's trying to get you, but rarely do you ever see her. Just like Pizzeria Simulator, there are also a few minigames that you can play, and just like that game, there are Easter eggs that you can access by playing some of them. I'm gonna let this rant in here. Why is Springtrap in the game? He died in the last game. Why is he here? Why do some of the endings have fully animated cutscenes but some of the endings are in a comic book format? Why did the game come out in such a buggy state? Why does this game exist? I know FNAF is one of those franchises that a lot of fans want to continue, especially for me, but the people who came up with this game need to respect the timeline and the entire story of the games. I'm gonna give this game a 7 out of 10. A bit scary, looks a bit challenging, the overall design of the map and the characters just doesn't fit well for a horror game. Now to the spin-offs. The first one, FNAF World. This is an RPG take on the franchise, containing characters from the first game to FNAF 4, alongside some characters that never appeared in these games. You take control of Freddy and explore the world. Just like any other turn-based RPG, enemies appear randomly. You can use up to 8 animatronics split into 2 groups of 4. You can unlock new animatronics by simply facing them. There are also bosses. That's it. You can buy upgrades and items that can help you. There are multiple areas, each correlating with a specific theme. Just like Pizzeria Simulator, there are a bunch of minigames included. There are a ton of Easter eggs that you can access here and there within these. And while you think that this game is an RPG, there are still jump scares in here. It is a Five Nights at Freddy's game after all. 8 out of 10, a lot of content, not a great RPG, but not a bad one. Lastly, we have Ultimate Custom Night. While I consider this game a spin-off, there are scenarios in the game that deals with the main story of the series, and some are just plain weird. As the title implies, this game is solely one giant custom night. You got all the animatronics from the first game to Pizzeria Simulator, and let me tell you, this is definitely one of the hardest games in the series. The hardest one yet. You have a lot more gameplay mechanics, which means you have a lot more responsibility. If you're gonna play this game for the first time, just start off with a low level of difficulty and a few number of animatronics. It's also gonna take a lot of time to figure out the controls, which are really vital since this game is really fast paced. 8 out of 10, sheer insanity, great jump scares, not much content, but you know. So that's the entirety of the FNAF franchise. I definitely miss the old days, back when fan music videos and short animated films were quite popular. Now I just kind of think that the franchise is slowly losing identity. Not because they keep making bad games back to back or they're not doing anything original, it's just because they don't have the same flair as they did back when they were starting out. It's nice to look back on this series, it's definitely one of my childhood classics. Might want to talk about that soon. Oh hey, Merry Christmas to one and all. For this special occasion, I like to share some of my childhood classics, the games that made me who I am today. So we're going to find out why I can't get a life. Video games, one of the greatest creations of mankind, a new way to play games while disassociating from family members, friends, and possible relationships. I didn't really know what video games were until my dad gave me the original iPad. I remember playing Angry Birds and a Kung Fu Panda game in this thing, but to this day it's still a debacle whether games on your phone are considered real video games. So let's jump a few years later when my dad bought an Xbox 360. Most of my childhood video games originated from the 7th generation of gaming, mainly the Xbox 360. The 360 is the console for most people. No offense. So let's see what are the games that I played with this bad boy. One game that I mostly remember is none other than Lego Marvel Superheroes. Even though I haven't played this game in a while, this is still my favorite game. I was a huge Marvel fanboy at the time, and being able to play most of the well-known Marvel characters in a Lego game is the dream. There are a ton of Easter eggs in this game, and there's so much stuff to do here. Challenges, side quests, even just the overworld. I usually hop into this game and just fly or swing around the world, and whenever I feel bored doing so, I would just replay the story missions with different characters. See, that's one of the main things I like about this game. You aren't required to play this specific character only in this specific mission. No, you can play as other characters with the same abilities in any story mission. There's a ton of replayability in this game, and that's just one of the few reasons why this game is my favorite. Now, speaking of LEGO games, I also played the classic LEGO Batman the video game. This is another childhood classic of mine, and it's still a lot of fun to play. The different abilities are so fun to use, and you can use them in these iconic missions. My favorite part of this game is the penguin boss fight, it's just so engaging and so fun. But my go-to game is still LEGO Marvel Superheroes. While LEGO Batman offers a ton of great content, there's just more great content in LEGO Marvel Superheroes. Both of these games still hold the same amount of nostalgia anyway. By the way, this game comes in as a double pack with the game Pure. It's an off-road racing game where you drive a quad bike and do stunts. It's another game I also played back then, but it was never really my thing. The game is fun, no doubt, but I didn't really play a ton of it back then. Also, I found out that this game is published by Disney Interactive Studios. It's really weird seeing a Disney published game not having any reference to any Disney media in particular. Oh, and you can't forget Call of Duty. Yes, I'm still missing the original Modern Warfare, you angry? My go-to game in this trilogy is Modern Warfare 3. While some consider this game to be the worst in the trilogy, I didn't really care at all. Back then, I only played Call of Duty mainly for the campaign and the side modes, never the multiplayer. But since I mostly play COD for the campaign, does that mean I like MW3's campaign? No. It's not perfect, it's not great, but it's not bad either. But the campaign has some fun missions to play, and that's why I keep coming back to this game. While the original Modern Warfare trilogy is great, you can't forget Black Ops. Call of Duty Black Ops 1 and 2 are some of my favorite games in the franchise. The story, the characters, and the gameplay, all of them still hold up to this day. But for me personally, Black Ops 2 is easily the best. You got the same characters from the first game and the addition of the new characters, all of them are well written and have a purpose in the story. You also got these side missions where you got to finish different tasks. Sure, you can just skip them, but they actually have a great deal with how the story changes. Of course, you can't forget the multiplayer. The multiplayer has some of the most memorable maps in COD history, and overall it is a lot of fun, but rarely did I ever play online multiplayer. The same goes for any other 360 games with multiplayer, so what my brother and I did is that we just add in a bunch of bots, select the map, and maximize the number of slots that you can use to customize your loadouts. It was great, though it did get a bit repetitive and boring sometimes, but for the most part it was still a lot of fun. Oh, and you also can't forget zombies. While the game only has a few maps for zombies, they're still quite memorable and fun. Now Advanced Warfare sucks, but this was the first COD game I aimed to get all of the achievements. At least the ones I could get by playing the campaign. I didn't really care about the story, but I was down for its futuristic setting. The robots, the weapons, the sound design, it's so satisfying. Of course you're not an Xbox guy if you don't have a Halo game. The first Halo game I ever played was Halo Reach. The last game Bungie put out for the series that takes place before the first game, Halo Combat Evolved. I have a lot of great memories playing this game, mainly the campaign, firefight, and Forge. You haven't played multiplayer? Yeah, I haven't played it because the Xbox One was nearly a year old and I couldn't find a single lobby and gave up. But that all changed when I finally bought the Master Chief Collection. Now I can play the multiplayer of Reach and the other Halo games. Back then, most of my memories playing this game was me and my brother playing the campaign in co-op. We would just mess around with each other and get a taste of what suffering is like by playing the campaign in Legendary. Another 360 exclusive title I played was Forza Horizon. Now, I'm not a big fan of the racing genre of video games, but driving around in this game feels so satisfying, along with the music playing in the background, and this game still looks stellar to this day. Now I haven't exactly been in this game before, but it doesn't matter. The only reason I play a racing game is to go super fast with Freebird playing in the background. Speaking of Forza, I did play a few other Forza Motorsport games. Forza Motorsport 2, 3, and 4. If I were to pick my favorite out of those three, it would definitely be Forza Motorsport 3. But as I said, I don't have a ton of memories playing racing games, but I do remember usually coming back to this game when I was a kid. Oh shit, I own this thing? Yeah, I'm one of those guys that own the Kinect. Happy? Of course, you don't fully own a Kinect when you don't have its pack-in game, Kinect Adventures. This game demonstrates the power of the Kinect, which tracks your body movement using its motion sensors and camera. Now, is this game easy to control? No. Is there much to do in this game? No. Is this game fun? That depends on what you view as fun, but for me, no. Another title that demonstrates the power of the Kinect is Kinect Sports, which is basically a direct response to Wii Sports with the Wii. This should have been the pack-in game for the Kinect instead of Kinect Adventures. This game is way more engaging and way more fun that it involves you trying to be more active within the game. And the overall content this game has compared to Kinect Adventures is much better. The controls work really well, especially with boxing and track and field. Another Kinect title I played was Kinect Rush, a Disney Pixar adventure game. This game is my favorite Kinect title, but it's far from perfect. Just like any other Kinect title, the controls aren't the best, but they're okay enough in this game. You can customize your own character and you can play in various scenes of other Disney Pixar movies along with the characters that belong to those movies. It's really fun to play with some of the most iconic Disney Pixar characters of all time. But like I said, the controls are what keep me away from this game, and the only reason I want to come back to this game is for childhood pleasure. What is this? Dance Central 2, another game I played back then and had loads of fun with it. My family and I would play this game for hours, just dancing to some popular songs, especially the Numa Numa song. It's still amazing to see that this series is still alive with the 2019 release. So the 2019 release isn't compatible with the Kinect anymore, as it was released exclusively on the Oculus Quest, a VR system. I would definitely like to see a return for the Kinect. While yes, the Kinect is what killed the Xbox 360 in its late years and the Xbox One in its early years, I would still like to see the Kinect return to some form. Now that is pretty much the vast majority of games I remember playing on the 360 back then. So let's move on to another platform, the PSP. This PSP was handed down to me by my uncle. It had a ton of great games included, and my dad, I don't mean those games. To start off, Iron Man. The controls aren't great, but the graphics look so good at the time. I never finished this game because I always got confused with the controls. So what about a game that has great controls? Here is Star Wars Battlefront Renegade Squadron. When I first played this game, I was amazed by the graphics and all. It's so fun to play as some of the most memorable Star Wars characters of all time. The maps are huge and there are tons of ways to advance against your enemies. I would dominate my enemies, and by that, I mean bots. Yeah, I never really figured out how to play online with the PSP, but I didn't really bother with it. Speaking of Star Wars, I also played Star Wars The Force Unleashed. The controls on this game are amazing and it really works well with the PSP. This game is a lot of fun and the story is really engaging. Sure, there are some flaws in the story of these games, but you gotta admit, they have better writing than.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
I remember putting in cheat codes in this game so that I could play as Obi-Wan, Anakin, Luke, and any other character within the Star Wars universe, even though they don't have anything to do with the main story of the game. There are these side quests where you can play as specific characters within some of the most iconic battle scenes in Star Wars history. This game is amazing. But there is one other game that is memorable for me. Persona 3 Portable. This is the game for the PSP. This game takes about 65 and a half hours to complete. There's just a ton of stuff to do here. And the main gameplay is astonishing. This is the first turn-based RPG I've ever played, and it really changed my perspective on pretty much every variety of role-playing games. The story is amazing. The choices you make have a really great impact on how the story turns out. The dungeons are well designed, there's a lot of enemy variety. The game can be a bit hard at times, but back then the difficulty was okay for me. So that's pretty much all the childhood video games that I could think of. Another huge portion of my video game childhood originated from the iPad. And if mobile games are considered to be real video games, then might as well include them here. Temple Run, Jetpack Joyride, Fruit Ninja, Flappy Bird, Geometry Dash, Plants vs Zombies, Tiny Tower, and of course, Minecraft. These games, while simple, holds a ton of value to me, and the types of games that we played back when we were kids made us who we are today. So if you're reminiscing about the good old days, if you still have those games lurking around in your basement, go ahead and play them. There's no harm being a child at heart. So, I wish you all a Merry Christmas and see you all next year. I can't say it's the hardest game of all time, but sure gave me a migraine. So, I hope I no longer return to this game for some stupid reason like completing this game 100%. You know what? I think I might do that. But I think I might need a break to do that first. So, I'm going to be productive. I can't just sit here and talk about all things gaming. I need to make a living. Oh, hey, I made a mistake. Apparently, a child bought the game and it showed Steve Harvey in bikini, so I guess this is a part where I talk about Xbox Live instead. Xbox Live, now known as the Xbox Network. Why? Is an online multiplayer gaming and digital media delivery service created and operated by Microsoft themselves for the Xbox. As Microsoft developed the original Xbox, online gaming was one of their main objectives for the Xbox strategy. Back then, the only form of multiplayer was to have one or more people play with you under the same roof, with multiple controllers, on the same console, and on the same TV screens. That is, unless you count PC games, but let's just stick to this generation of gaming for now. More specifically, the consoles in this generation. The Xbox Live was the second online gaming service to launch, and to have also lasted quite a while, with the PS2's online service launching first. However, the PS2 itself didn't initially ship with built-in network capabilities. Sega and Nintendo attempted to jump into this trend too, though their online services weren't as successful compared to the Xbox and PS2. SegaNet was an internet service geared for online gaming on the Dreamcast, which discontinued less than a year later after the console's release and shutting down its servers 2 years later. The GameCube barely had any games with internet functionality, half of which required either having to buy their official broadband or modem adapter to play games over the internet or games that have LAN support. Microsoft, however, hoped that the Xbox would succeed where others have failed. They want this online gaming service to not only allow for downloadable content to be downloaded quickly and stored, but also to make it possible for features like voice communication and the like. This hasn't been done before by any other competitors during and before this generation of gaming. So this could increase the console's sales, luring in gamers who want to try out playing games with people online. And it succeeded. The service was unveiled at E3 2002. Booths of broadband-connected Xbox consoles featured an early version of a game called Unreal Championship, which demonstrated the Xbox Live on the show floor. This game was developed to take advantage of the Xbox Live and was slated a debut on November 15, 2002, marking the first anniversary of the Xbox launch. Microsoft announced that 50 Xbox Live titles would be available by the end of 2003. They also said that the Xbox Live would feature a friends list, a standardized voice chat, and a single identity across all titles. From that point on, any Xbox game that has internet functionality would have this label on both the cover art and the spine. However, games like Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell and Brute Force have this bubble instead on the cover art, implying that these games only feature downloadable content, but that eventually changed later on. One of the standout features of the Xbox Live was the Xbox Live Arcade, XBLA for short. It's a digital platform that launched on November 6, 2004, and it provides a collection of downloadable games. Think of it like a virtual arcade, offering players a library of games that cater to various preferences. Originally, the software was obtained by ordering it on Microsoft's website. It was sent via mail on a disc that also contained a free version for Mrs. Pac-Man. Not a bad game to pick, but it is an odd choice. If you want to promote the Xbox Live Arcade, you could at least give away a free Xbox exclusive title like Conkers or something. That would have been a bit better. The service launched with 6 titles and expanded its library to 12 titles by the end of the year. Once it connected to Xbox Live, everyone could purchase additional titles by using a credit card or download a free limited trial version of a game. Most of these games were typically smaller compared to non-Xbox Live Arcade titles, but they were also pretty cheap, ranging from around $5 to $15. And they often showed unique gameplay and artistic styles. Now, the Xbox Live Arcade games on the original Xbox were serviceable. They get the job done, but there really aren't that many to choose from since it only has like 27 titles. It's a nice little bonus at the time, but it gets better from there. First, let's talk about the online multiplayer. It's one of the defining features of the Xbox Live, being able to connect with players from different parts of the globe. This was a game changer as it transformed gaming from a localized activity to a global phenomenon. Let's zoom in on a specific game that played a pivotal role in the success of the Xbox Live, Halo 2. Released around 2004, Halo 2 was not only a critically acclaimed title, but also a pioneer in the realm of online multiplayer. This game offered a robust online matchmaking system that allowed players to compete in various modes, which marked a significant departure from the traditional split-screen and LAN party multiplayer of Halo Combat Evolved. While Combat Evolved established the core principles of Halo's multiplayer, Halo 2 took those principles and pushed them even further. The transition to online play revolutionized the way players engage with the game, offering a more accessible and competitive multiplayer experiences. And it's not just the online multiplayer. Halo 2 even introduced a wider array of weapons and vehicles, iconic maps, and innovative gameplay mechanics like dual wielding. These new additions improved upon the multiplayer of Halo, while also not straying away from what makes a Halo multiplayer a Halo multiplayer. But to the core subject at hand, by the time of the Xbox 360, all titles were required to provide at least a limited form of Xbox Live awareness, meaning that 360 titles must either have a multiplayer mode or simply an in-game feature that has an online functionality. In July 2004, Xbox Live reached 1 million online users, which then doubled the next year. The Xbox 360, released in 2005, introduced new features, services, and experiences to the Xbox Live that expanded the scope of online gaming. Because of this, Xbox Live underwent significant growth, strengthening its position as the leading online gaming service and community hub. With the 360's enhanced hardware, it made online play much smoother, reducing lag and improving overall connectivity. During this period, Microsoft introduced the Xbox Live Marketplace, a digital store that allows users to purchase and download games, add-ons, avatars, and themes, and the like. This paved way for downloadable content to become a major part of gaming that can enhance or even extend the life of some popular titles. Of course, Xbox Live is still there, but it flourished this time around. It now has a wider array of games, from classic arcade titles to indie titles. Games like Castle Crashers, Limbo, and Super Meat Boy became popular hits on the Xbox Live Arcade, which further establishes the service as a hub for unique gaming experiences. I had a lot of fun playing with these titles, even though most of them are either demos, require Xbox Live, or are just straight complicated for my underage brain. They have a special place in my heart for gaming. It's just that Xbox Live Arcade titles feel different than AAA titles, which are the kind of games I mostly played when I was younger. These games are much simpler to understand, and they have their own unique style to it, whether be it the art style or the gameplay itself. Now, I mentioned this during Christmas, but I'll say it again, I never played online. My parents were pretty strict with me playing with other people around the world, which is understandable. I was pretty young at the time and I'd always play Call of Duty, so if I did somehow get access to playing online, I don't think I could survive. And you know how COD lobbies were back then.
What do you want me to use? You tell me what you want to fucking use. You tell me what the fucking is.
Where were we? The 360 introduced avatars, which are customizable characters you can use to represent yourself online. This is pretty much Xbox's alternative to the Mii. I'd spend hours coming up with the characters. There are tons of customizations, and you can even use accessories that belong in certain games. I can be whoever I want! And this is the prime reason why I love character customization in video games. You get to create a character that represents you, and you can play as that character in a video game. You can be yourself, or you can be Peter Griffin. Those are your two choices. Now, party chat exists before on the original Xbox, but on the 360 that became more prevalent, and almost everyone that can play online has one. When it comes to the Kinect, players could engage in video chat or with a headphone, but I don't think a single person has done this with the Kinect. Why would you talk with someone through the Kinect when you can do the same thing with a headphone? The Kinect is more known as a peripheral for body movements, not used for Skype. Speaking of social features, Xbox Live offers a wide range of streaming services like Netflix, Hulu, and YouTube, as well as rent or purchase movies and TV shows through the platform. My family barely used any of this, primarily because they think the 360 is a machine that can only play video games. Another reason is that we were more of a cable guy. Please don't bomb us, we're just poor. On May 21, 2013, a new console was publicly unveiled under the name Xbox One and was presented as an all-in-one entertainment device. What? This was a terrible press conference, and that's saying something because I strongly agree with the opinion that almost every Xbox conference is mediocre. The event focused heavily on the console's multimedia capabilities, which went on for over 30 minutes before any actual video games were shown. And the majority of the games they showed are stuff you can already play on the 360. FIFA, Madden, and Forza Motorsport? You got more than one of each on the 360. Quantum Break did look interesting, and Call of Duty Ghosts was Call of Duty Ghosts.
New dog model.
But that's not the main takeaway here. Initially, the Xbox One would require an online connection and restrictions on used game sales. Not only that, but the Xbox One was so freaking expensive. This is why Xbox lost during this generation of gaming. Compared to the other two, the PlayStation 4 was $100 cheaper, and they even uploaded a video on how to lend games with your friends, essentially dunking on the restrictions that Xbox One had for its games initially. And the Wii U exists. During this era of gaming, online gaming became more and more prevalent to the point where it's not as fascinating as it was during its teenage years, but the Xbox Live continued to evolve, offering a more enhanced online gaming experience for the system. People who have or don't have an Xbox Live Gold membership still have access to the Xbox Store, which was formerly known as the Xbox Live Marketplace, which means they can still go through catalogs of games without needing a paid subscription. Xbox Live Gold, on the other hand, still remained a central component of Xbox Live, providing access to online multiplayer, exclusive discounts, and free monthly games. And this is where things get interesting. The Xbox Game Pass was a subscription service that offered access to a library of games for a monthly fee, allowing players to download and play a wide array of games, which eventually made its way to the PC. The Xbox Game Pass is currently one of the most cost-effective ways to access a huge library of games across multiple platforms. It's easily accessible and has a wide variety of games. Now, even to this day, I'm not subscribed to it, but a lot of people really enjoyed the service. Not only does it offer a ton of games, but also offers day one access to new Xbox Game Studio titles, which means people can play highly anticipated games as soon as they are released without needing to purchase them separately. And it also provides exclusive discounts for subscribers. Since Game Pass eventually made its way to the PC, a good portion of PC games are optimized specifically for the PC. So an Xbox Game Pass for PC was made containing a different set of titles compared to the console version. Some games may be available on both platforms, but the PC library has its own unique offerings. Because of this, cross-platform play was implemented, allowing Xbox One players to play with people on other platforms, including PC, and, in some cases, other consoles. Moving back to Xbox Live, clubs and LFGs, meaning looking for groups, was introduced, and it enabled players to form communities and organize and find gaming sessions more easily. It even has its own dedicated chat channels, both text and voice. Members can post text messages, images, videos, and more within the activity feed. A club focused on a specific game might have LFG posts for specific in-game activities. LFGs are incredibly useful, especially if you're looking for co-op play, teammates for multiplayer matches, or help with certain achievements. Then there comes the Xbox Live Creators Program, an initiative by Microsoft aimed at warranting indie devs to create and publish their games on Xbox and Windows. It encouraged developers to engage with the Xbox community and gather input to improve their games, and this was facilitated through features like clubs, for example. One of the key features of the program was that it allowed developers to self-publish their own games on the Xbox Store. These games have certain features of the Xbox Live service, though not as extensive as a fully fledged Xbox title. While most of these games may not have reached the same level of fame as major Xbox exclusives, this is still a huge plus for developers who want to make and publish their own games on Xbox. Now, cross-platform gaming is becoming more and more relevant, and that's when cloud gaming is finally a thing. Cloud gaming is like playing games over the internet without needing to install and play games on a device. This made it possible to play console games even on your phone. The catch is it requires a ton of internet and takes up a lot of battery, especially if you're playing on a phone. But this is still a big deal, and Microsoft began experimenting with it through Project xCloud, allowing players to stream Xbox games to compatible devices, including phones and tablets. This is really great, especially if you're subscribed to Game Pass and you live in America. Mixer, Microsoft's game streaming platform, was integrated into Xbox Live, allowing users to easily broadcast their gameplay and watch live streams. Since it was integrated directly into the system, it meant that users didn't need to download a separate app to start streaming. However, Mixer was shut down on July 22, 2020 as part of an agreement to collaborate with Facebook. Towards the end of the Xbox One era, Xbox Live seamlessly transitioned to support the Xbox Series X and S, featuring the same user interface and everything. Xbox Live has played a major role in revolutionizing online gaming on consoles as a whole, offering features like online multiplayer, voice chat, gamer tags, achievements, and a digital marketplace for video games. Xbox Live has evolved over the years, expanding to include Xbox Live Arcade, social features like Club, and subscription services like the Game Pass. It has also adapted to cloud gaming and cross-platform play, making gaming more accessible. Xbox Live is a fundamental platform for gamers to connect, compete, and enjoy a wide variety of games and content. Alright, it turns out Steve Harvey in bikinis wasn't the problem. It was Dr. Phil. But that's not what I was going to talk about anyway. So, riddle me this, Xbox. Why can't I play my 11-year-old copy of Forza Horizon when I can just pirate freaking Starfield?
Oh hey, I switched the camera again this time, just to spice things up a bit. By the way, you ever look at an old video and be like, man, I want to go back to the past? Well, for that I made up a brilliant solution.
Nostalgia is like Lego Marvel superheroes. Once you have one, you can't go back. It's normal for people to reminisce about the olden days, but really, what makes us feel nostalgic? Especially in the realm of gaming, where pretty much everyone in the current generation has a special feeling towards gaming. And by everyone, I meant this. In this current generation, a lot of games have evoked this feeling that, obviously, gaming is becoming more and more advanced. Detailed graphics, innovative gameplay, and a shit ton of microtransactions. With all of these shenanigans, I find myself often longing back to the good old days. I'm not saying that newer games don't leave a lasting impact the same way games did back then. Don't get me wrong, all of the games in this new generation may as well be listed among the best games ever made. But a number of noticeable games, especially back in 2023, were remakes. Dead Space, Resident Evil 4, and Super Mario RPG, just to name a few. These games that were released around the early to mid-2000s are now remade for the current generation. While some things have been improved upon on some of these remakes, there were some changes that made the game not worse per se, but made the game not have the initial impact the original version delivered. There's a certain magic when you play the original version of a game when you're young, and when you play a remastered version or remake of that game, there's still that part that wants to make you play the original instead, no matter what generation of gaming you're born in. Water? Day old water.
Please take my wallet.
This is what I call the golden era of gaming dilemma. A dilemma wherein an individual wants to go back to the past to relive the time when they were young, full of joy, and wants to play the games they love when these games were at their peak. Yes, I know there's a word for that. I just like making stuff up. Now, the golden age of gaming is a bit of a debacle. For some it was during the early 90s, for others it may be way before that. Oh yeah, I too love counting pixels on my screen. Screw Bayonetta, I embrace tradition. But really, the golden age is based on your opinions. There's no right or wrong answer because it can depend on several factors, ranging from how long we've been playing games, which ones we treasure the most, and what circumstances of our lives used to look like. But to speak for the currently reigning generation of our time, I think the golden age of gaming would sit right around the 2000s. The era of emo hairstyles, crappy webcams, and iconic video games, iCarly, and unforgettable memories. After the video game crash in 1983, Nintendo picked up the pace and revived the gaming industry.
Since then, Nintendo has been king and one of been the most successful video game companies of all time. They had a ton of competitors, mainly Sega, but one stood out from the rest. By the time of the fifth generation of gaming, Sony unveiled to the world their first foray into the gaming industry, the PlayStation. The PlayStation and PS2 became two of the best-selling consoles of all time. During the sixth generation of gaming, Microsoft joined in the competition and unveiled their own gaming console, the Xbox. Around this time, the competition was fierce. Four of the biggest gaming companies, Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, and Sega, are battling each other out to become the overall best console of this generation. In the end, Sony wins again with their PS2, but this is just the beginning of something bigger. The seventh generation of gaming has come, and the Xbox 360 just became the fastest selling video game console of its time. By the time the PlayStation 3 was released, things spiced up. In came the console war. Console wars are summed up as, the way I spend my money is way better than how you spend money. Dude, I just paid my taxes. And nowhere were console wars more than a thing than the Xbox 360 versus the PlayStation 3. Console wars were already a thing back then. Another famous example of this is the SNES versus the Sega Genesis. Ever since the conception of gaming, video game fans have always been against each other based on the consoles they used, but never before were two consoles so perfectly balanced that it's still up for debate which console is better. This battle can be argued via the very minor pros and cons of each console. There's so much to argue about this topic, but if you were to ask my opinion, I would pick the 360. Not because it's better than the PS3, it's just that I don't own a PS3. Do you think my opinion matters if this is my condition? In fact, why are you asking me in the first place? I have a lot of love for my Xbox 360. Even though I don't use that often anymore, I have a ton of great memories with it, and nothing can change that. Heading back home after school to play a bunch of games was the childhood I never even knew I wanted. And this is the only thing other than my PSP that I had video game wise. The problem was that I lived in a Filipino household. Anyone would scold me if I even touched a slider on the television. This bad boy was all I knew about video games. Whenever my dad bought a new game, I would either play that game straight away and for a long time, or place it in my backlog of games. That includes you, Perfect Dark Zero. Eventually, I got my hands on an iPad, and you know what that means? Politics! One thing that made the early 2000s memorable for gaming was the internet. YouTube back then was just a website where you could just upload videos for fun. I'm taking this as an opportunity to say that modern YouTube sucks. It was around this time that many popular YouTubers were starting out, making commentaries, let's plays, skits, impressions, and so much more. I remember watching a ton of gameplays and whatnot, and all these YouTubers, much like classic video games, had an everlasting impact on the gaming community. And it's not just YouTubers who benefited from making videos and playing games all the time. We also share those benefits because we grew up watching them. Heck, most of these YouTubers are still uploading videos about video games, and some of which may be better than what they were in their past. But that's just a theory, a game theory. Oh. YouTube and many other social media platforms were and still are a great way to spread a video game's popularity. And if a popular content creator makes a video out of it and gets trending, either the video game was a success or the video itself is better than the content it's talking about. Either way, you'd still get some relevancy. Yeah, I can talk smack about Destiny 2 being dog shit. I don't like the hate, I just like attention. Speaking of the internet, online multiplayer during around this time became so big that it was like the golden age. As someone who was pretty young at the time and didn't have full access to online multiplayer, I can't say much for all of this, but I will say that I definitely felt the impact online multiplayer had during the 360 era. It was a blast. I remember hopping on YouTube after school and watching a bunch of Call of Duty Funny Moments videos, and man, those videos are still pretty entertaining to this day. It's not like today where online gaming is pretty much a norm and readily accessible to anyone who has a PC or a paid online subscription, but back then, and this is coming from my view, Hopping into online matches felt like a miracle. The internet service back then wasn't great, and very few people here in the country play video games because they have better stuff to do, but getting on an online match back then was a dream to behold. Being able to play with other people and around the globe was amazing. One of the biggest challenges for gamers at that time is to suffice not having to play video games all day. Well, lucky for that, we have the portables. Finally, I can watch Family Guy on the go! This is right around the time when turning machines more portable was a huge hit, when the iPod was trending and when the iPhone was the hot new thing. It's the same thing with video game consoles. The very thought of playing games on the go was a pretty popular concept done before, but they're outdated or clunky to use in the present times. During this time around, portable video game consoles have received a massive upgrade. To have Uggy the dog sign up in your commercial. Rest in peace. Not a ton of portable consoles were released in this generation, but two did stand out, the Nintendo DS and the PlayStation Portable. I didn't have a DS growing up, but I did have a PSP and it was a blast. Back then, it really felt like I'm bringing a video game console wherever I go. And let me just say this, the PSP is just peak 2000s gaming design. Everything about it just resembles the 2000s era of gaming. Sure, all the other major consoles have that vibe, but something about the PSP, to me, just stands out from the rest. One thing I didn't mention before, I had a universal media disc of Family Guy for the PSP. I watched it when I was a kid, and to keep things short, I did not remember a thing. The 2000s was home to the greatest games ever made. There's so many that I might have an aneurysm the moment I start talking about it. Okay, here we go. All of these games left a huge mark on the gaming landscape. Even people born after this generation of gaming cannot deny its impact. But the ones that stuck to me are the ones that defined my entire childhood. Black Ops 1 and 2, Forza Horizon, Halo Reach, Castle Crashes, Arkham City, Minecraft, Persona 3, Crazy Taxi, Marvel vs. Capcom, and my holy grail, LEGO Marvel Superheroes. These titles got me really into gaming. So it was around the late 2000s when I finally invested myself in the internet, looking up what games are about to release even though I know deep down that I cannot afford any of them. This is when I finally learned about gaming related media. The reveal trailers, the press conferences, E3. Rest in peace, by the way, to this absolute legend. You will not be forgotten, especially since I talked about you only once in my life. The advertisements in this era of gaming were unforgettable. Pretty much anything that came out of this era is considered iconic, especially in the 7th generation of gaming, which I consider to be the golden age of gaming. Everything surrounding it is pure of magic, and looking back at it, I really wish I spent more time playing video games back then. It's hard to describe it with mere words because you deeply need to feel that ambiance the 2000s era of gaming delivered. And to top things off, there's one more reason why the 2000s was the best era of gaming, and this is a fact. The piss filter. That's right, that's why the 2000s is the best era of gaming. Video game companies were leaking everywhere. Oh hey, I've heard rumors that you can just level up by just punching a ton of bugs. Who knew leveling up would be so easy? It's a good thing I left my sandwich on my desk for 5 years. Inflation's been hard. From now on, I'll dedicate my entire time to just punching a ton of bugs. By then, I'll be as strong as The Rock. Shrek 5 released. Yeah, that's pretty much all I can say about it.
When I was a boy, I always loved watching TV shows and movies, most of which are obviously made for children and maybe for young teens as well. This was my go-to hobby back then, spending every dime of a second to watch Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. But the main reason why I love watching these is because I like being immersed in the world in the TV show or movie that I'm watching. So much of my childhood is me imagining what I would be like in that world. I recall one time when I imagined myself as a 7-year-old Jedi Master teabagging Darth Vader and saving the galaxy. That was a really cool thing to me back then. They should have hired me when they were making the sequels, and look where that's got them. This is why I like asking my parents to buy me some action figures, and I still have them today to remind me how autistic I was. By the time I laid my hands on an iPad and played my first ever video game, which was a Kung Fu Panda side-scroller, I realized that, wait, maybe there's another way to be more autistic. Never before have I been so immersed and focused in my life. It's not like when watching a movie where you're just watching it. You can interact with things in a video game, and that alone sold me. It was like my dream come true to influence a fantasy world in my very eyes. But you see, most of my childhood was playing mobile games. Most of them back then were just simple puzzle games and side-scrollers, and those were basically what I played back then. I just downloaded and played what's ever trending in the App Store. A few moments passed and I stumbled upon the realm of YouTube. And what was the first thing I searched there? Cat. So you know those construction equipment with the cat logo on them? Well, I had a bunch of toys of them back then and they just so happened to be beside me when I opened YouTube. But don't worry, I'm not done talking about cats yet. I still have to talk about this legend. Stampy Longhead, a name that I hold a ton of respect and love for. To keep things short, this guy raised an entire generation of kids, and I'm one of them. He's well known as Stampy in his Lovely World series, where he does a bunch of games, builds iconic places, and creates stories that are so memorable. It's a shame that the series had ended, but I think it deserves its rest, considering that it's not as popular as it used to be, and that Stampy had to raise an entire generation of kids, unlike the other freak shows. This was my first foray into learning role-playing. I've done role-playing way before I had even learned the term, and by the time I did, I just got more invested to it. This was me when I first started.
And look at me now.
So in came the role-playing games. So role-playing games, RPGs for short, is a pretty broad term when you look at it technically. The most basic definition you could give is you play as a character and the character you play as changes the story. But the definition could literally be applied to every other video game genre out there. Take Cuphead for example. You can either defeat a bunch of cartoon characters or make love to a pillar. Taiko no Tatsujin, you can either beat to the rhythm or cause noise complaints. City Skylines, I love genocide. You see, that basic definition is so broad, you can apply that to every other video game genre. But you know a role-playing game when you see one. They just have that distinct smell.
Ugh, Starfield!
So according to Wikipedia, the best place for all your sources, a role-playing video game is where the player controls the actions of a character or several party members, immersed in some well-defined world, usually involving some form of character development by way of recording statistics. If any English speaker could understand what that meant, don't worry, cause I don't either. Recording statistics? I didn't know my mom played Skyrim. The definition here is a bit foggy as well. You can apply that once again to any other video game regardless of genre. You are the character and you're controlling the actions in a well-defined world. This can be very confusing to a lot of people. I've heard people say Shaq Fu is one of their favorite RPGs, but you can't deny that RPGs have that distinct look and feel to them. So in order for us to better understand the unique aspects of RPGs and to differentiate this genre from other video game genres, I have with me a smorgasbord of terms to see what makes an RPG an RPG. Starting off with number 1. Where the hell am I? RPGs are mostly known for having unique and iconic worlds, most of which are pure fantasy worlds. Sure, you can play in a dystopian world, in space, or even in real-life places, but it's mostly fantasy. This can be rooted all the way back to the tabletop RPGs, specifically in the likes of Dungeons & Dragons. Fantasy is the go-to here, mainly because it's easier to come up with a bunch of wacky thingamajigs without having to be too technical and complex. Imagine creating a fictional superweapon in a sci-fi world. You have to come up with an entire research paper to even make sense of it. In a fantasy world, you can make a destroyer-like weapon by giving it a backstory when it used to be a goat. It's easy to make up stuff in a fantasy world because things were simpler back then, and you don't have to study too many scientific or technological concepts. Just make stuff up. It's that simple. But what RPGs lack in common sense makes up for in their stories. Maybe a bit too much. Number 2. what the hell's happening? Of course, the story is the main element of an RPG, because without it, it's no longer an RPG. It's like eating a sandwich with no filling. Sure, you got the bread, but where's the other stuff?
Gee, I wondered.
The stories in RPGs are some of the most beautiful and well-crafted forms of storytelling. Along with the world these stories are set in, RPGs can house the best stories ever to exist. It's a shame not a lot of people are giving respect to some of these games. The entire Kingdom Hearts franchise has a better plotline to the sequel trilogy, and even they have more weird stuff than them. And not a lot of RPGs so far have been adapted to other forms of media besides the recent Fallout show. The most notable one that I can think of is Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. Sure, in most RPGs you can customize an entire character to be like you, and that's not easy to adapt in a movie or TV show since the target audience is for everyone who has played or have heard of the game. But some RPGs like Final Fantasy VII have a set main character, meaning sure you can change the name of that character and even pick some dialogue options that character wouldn't really pick, but that character is still that character regardless of what and how you play as that character. Stories in RPGs are spectacular, but they can range from being fine to insanity. What the hell am I looking at right here? In most cases, RPGs tend to have the wackiest things happen in their series. Some are cool and awesome, but how the hell did Mickey Mouse end up in this universe? But RPGs contain a lot of detail in their stories, either incorporating that information into the foreground or just sticking it to extra collectibles you can find in the game world. It can be a bit overwhelming when a role-playing game just shoves a butt-ton of story on you, especially in a first-time playthrough, but if that does happen, it could either mean the game has an incredibly dense story and needs to find a way to cram all that data in the best way possible for the player to understand, or the developers like reading. Because of that, RPGs usually take longer to beat than any other video game genre. I'd be 80 by the time I finish Persona 5. See, the thing with RPGs is that they're well known for being long as hell. At the minimum, they take around 20 hours to finish. I don't know why I still love RPGs after that sentence, I just love them. It's like life, the more time I have, the more happy I am.
Police, hands up!
Oh no, it's the Pulis.
Well, I heard you were being happy.
Is that not my goal? Wait, did you just come here to distract me from being happy?
Maybe.
Alright, bye. Man, what a dick. Damn it.
The play length of RPGs is so long, Elder Scrolls 6 would release by the time you finish one, and this is caused by a handful of other reasons. Number 3. Press the A button. The most common gameplay type for RPGs is turn-based RPGs, meaning you wait for your opponent to make a move before you do, and vice versa. This type of RPG just refuses to die, and for good reason. Turn-based RPGs involve strategy and coordination. Just like chess, you plan out the best possible moves, which can give your enemy a disadvantage, and how to choose the best pieces to progress. That's a complex way of saying that. Most of the time, regardless of the gameplay, you're going to be fighting enemies for hours. The stories in RPGs can be overwhelming and make players lose focus. So how do you solve that? Make them fight the same enemies over and over and over. This is my main problem with RPGs. Doing the same fights can feel repetitive, and that's not a good way to make players enjoy your games. Most of these are random encounters in the game world, and they're usually there just to give you XP points and maybe some bonus items. Do you feel underleveled when fighting a boss? You can just fight the same enemies until you level up. This is called farming, doing the same encounters to become stronger or find rare items that can give you an advantage in battle. This is the most popular thing to come out of RPGs, other than RPGs themselves. There are all sorts of farming in other video game genres, they're just done in very different ways. But whenever I do some farming, it feels like I'm exploiting the game for rewards. At that point, I just begin to question, is this how the game was programmed? If that's what the developers wanted, just to farm and farm, they could have just done it in more creative and non-repetitive ways. What about side quests? They're a big part of RPGs, so if you want players to level up more easily, just do more side quests. I don't know, man. I'm okay with farming in some RPGs, but when most of my playtime is just farming, that doesn't mean I enjoy playing a game, I just want to move on. Farming isn't really a bad thing, don't get me wrong. I've played RPGs for a long time and I've grown accustomed to it. But as I grow older, I become more conscious about it. It wasn't a big issue to me back then, but looking at it now, it's definitely a thing that's starting to feel a bit dated in a way. It all boils down to a love-hate relationship, but farming isn't really the only big issue with RPGs. Number 4. I love menus. What the fuck is all of this? Besides simulation games, RPGs have the most complex menu systems in all of gaming. There are menus in menus, sub-menus in menus, sub-menus in sub-menus, and these are so taxing to navigate. What happened to pressing just one button to go to the pause menu? Now I have to press this button, rotate the thumbstick to go there, and oh, I have to press another button and use the thumbstick again. The cycle repeats over and over again. These complex user interfaces are often seen in MMORPGs, which are RPGs but online. The user interface in these games is more complex than calculus, but I'll happily explain the entire user interface in Star Wars The Old Republic. But I won't because I want to bitch about something else. Number 5. Read the instructions! RPGs just can't resist making things that seem easy to understand and turning them into an entirely new language. For example, Monster Hunter World, one of my favorite games of all time. To get the basics down, at the top right corner of your screen, it shows a list of actions that you can perform by pressing specific buttons. That seems simple enough so long as you're using easy to understand weapons. And then we have things like, hey guys, today I'm going to be teaching you about the Charge Blade. It's a super simple tutorial and I hope you understand the lesson or else I'll come to your house and have forced sexual intercourse with your entire family. So here's how the Charge Blade works. The Charge Blade has 2 forms and a file system. Sword and Shield form is the default form. Its combos revolve around ability, defense, and attack. Charge Strike. Its combos revolve around also have the twin swift. The main goal of Sword and Shield form is Sword and Shield. The main goal of Sword and Shield form is to build up. You see what I mean? And these overcomplicated stuff influence the user interface as I mentioned earlier. If your gameplay system isn't too complex, then we would have had a nice and simplified user interface, easy to understand and can be picked up right from the get-go. But if it isn't, I don't want to read the instructions on how to use this or that. Some games even have instructions for menus. Menus! Not how an attack works or how to do some combos. No, menus! But I'll still happily explain the user interface in the Old Republic. Number 6. Perfection. Most RPGs let you create your own characters, and this is an integral part in identifying whether a game is an RPG or not. The core of RPGs is role-playing, so if you don't even have the chance to roleplay as a character that you like playing, then it's not an RPG, that's Facebook. You can become anything you want in an RPG, that's the main goal. I can be a heroic Viking slaying dragons and becoming the savior of the people, or become a gnome bard who can turn into a triceratops. Imagination is a driving part of the world of RPGs. One might say it's the origin of roleplay. You want to use that imagination to become the character you want to play, and character creators give you the chance to do that. Character creators are amazing. You know a game is going to be fun when you create the most insane abominations known to mankind. There are so many options you can choose from in character creators. With modern role-playing games, character creators allow you to change the characteristics of your character from your hair all the way down to the tiniest details, like your genitalia. I love it when character creators are in the game. It adds more for the players to express their overall character and be able to portray their character in the game world. But it's not technically role-playing if you're only dressing for the part. You also have to act.
Oh! I know. Download Tinder.
Number 7. I summon rats. You know your game's an RPG if it has a character creator and you can pick dialogue options. Most, if not all RPGs have dialogue options. These are choices you can make that can influence the story. At the very least, it can change your relationship with another NPC. This is yet another integral part of RPGs. The choices you make, the actions you do. They all influence a large portion of the game in some way. With these options, RPGs can offer you an experience not other video game genres can give, the chance to become someone you imagine. It's like you're really there in the game world. Even with games that don't have character creators, the immersion is still there because you have the ability to influence the progression of the story to your own liking. But just because you have the option to choose the action you want to do doesn't always mean your desired outcome will happen. This is why most RPGs have skill checks, where your one specific skill is required to reach this one particular level or point in order to successfully lay out your actions. This isn't just some mere gameplay barrier, it's actually important to have skill checks when making an action. Just like in real life, we make mistakes because we want to accomplish something so badly. That same ideology applies to RPGs. In one way or another, just like character creators, it adds more realism to the game world. Now these are all a bunch of stuff as to how I would personally define an RPG, but there are exceptional cases where one of these characters I laid out is not applied to an RPG, much like Final Fantasy VII. You can't really customize the most important details of Cloud like his funny hairstyle, but for the most part, you're the one to decide which dialogue options to pick. With that being said, there are games that are not RPGs but have RPG elements. I see a lot of people saying that God of War is an RPG. I mean, it feels like it, sure, but technically if you look closer, it really isn't. You don't really get to choose how the story would play out. You can't customize Kratos other than his armor. The story is all linear, you play it from beginning to end. You don't get to decide what Kratos should be doing cause, come on, he's Kratos. You really think you can boss him around, of all people? Listen, I love the game, I love the series, I bought God of War Ragnarok day one, but I just don't think it's an RPG. Ghost of Tsushima is another example. An excellent game no doubt, but it's an action game, not an RPG. Sure, there are times when you get to decide what Jin Sakai can do, but these options don't really influence how the story is going to end. Even the ending lets you choose whether you'll spare your uncle's life or not, but that'll probably be meaningless by the time a sequel releases. There are way too many examples to talk about, but I hope you're getting my point. You can call anything an RPG, sure, I won't argue. But this is just how I classify an RPG, and I'm sure all of you have other perspectives. It's totally normal, but RPGs for me just need that specific formula to be classified as an RPG, even if we can't totally pinpoint its exact details. In the meantime, while we're still arguing about the exact definition of RPGs, we gotta admit, we know an RPG when we see one. That's the simplest way to put it. And if you don't know an RPG when you see one, go ahead and play Candy Crush, who cares?
RPGs are the best things created by humankind, except fast food. But RPGs, like everything else in life, have their faults, like the overly complicated menu systems that RPGs tend to have, and the farming shtick. But RPGs have been a huge part of my life. I love role-playing and I love video games. If you mash them together, it's like a dream come true. I just had a nightmare about socks.